Friends, Naya Swami Riman here, and this week's article, video, and blog is on the question of love your enemies. How do we practice the principle of ahimsa, nonviolence, in this modern day and age? Excuse me. In past centuries, the average person had very few choices, very little opportunities for social mobility, or more importantly, even for the protection of their individual rights and liberties. Jesus' example of accepting the will of the Father by accepting crucifixion was in fact a very good example for the masses of the last 2,000 years in respect to the realities of their circumstances. Tolerance and endurance and faith are always excellent spiritual principles, but in social terms, outwardly at least, it's not as if the common person in the last 2,000 years had much choice. Nowadays, we don't accept that. As Swami Sri Yukteswar put it in his introduction to his only book, The Holy Science, in this age, beginning around, the birth of America, let's say, the 19th century and onwards, humanity has increasingly opted for or become conscious of our rights, our God-given, divine, or human rights, to seek life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so it is that in spiritual matters, a question comes up. How do we, let me put it this way. I saw a social post in which a Christian said that Jesus' advice in chapter 5 of the Gospel of Matthew to turn the other cheek and forgive 70 times 70 and to love your enemies was no longer feasible, was no longer appropriate. Well, I certainly wouldn't say that. I would say, and am saying for this purpose, that it's time for a new understanding of what that means. Turning the cheek might mean turning the cheek to the phone book to call a lawyer. That's a joke, sorry. But in fact, the question has arisen in respect, in a very practical way, here at Ananda in the Seattle area, the Seattle Sangha, of how we should respond or interact, or whether we should interact publicly with a branch of Ananda here that broke away from us less than a year ago, declared their independence. Our spiritual directors wrote to all of Ananda members in respect to this incident, but on principles only, that there are certain things that make a community part of Ananda worldwide. Overall, we're affiliated but not controlled, centralized, that is to say, worldwide. We are affiliated spiritually, and so they addressed the question of whether or not our spiritual affiliation had boundaries. Well, in this love thy neighbor as thyself, where we're now a human being with self-respect and rights, we, even as Vedantins, those who see it all as God, are perforce, it's appropriate to deal with the boundaries of differences, even as we affirm the oneness within ourselves. Sri Yukteswar himself even instigated lawsuits, and the history of Yogananda and Ananda has its share, unfortunately, of such things. So distinguishing ourselves from other organizations, spiritual organizations that share basic principles even, or perhaps especially, there's already a history for that. So the question of whether or not at this point the branch, which was a farming branch, has separated, whether we should, now that it's all done and over with and separate, should reaffirm some kind of connection. That's neither natural nor appropriate at this point because it would confuse people. The Declaration of Independence that group made, well, that says it all right there. Let's be independent. And so it's not necessarily always the right response to affirming our oneness or practicing ahimsa, nonviolence, to overlook simple and natural and self-affirmed or expressed principles of separation or boundaries. And so that is what we have done. We are carrying on our work in the attunement with the greater work of Ananda as we understand what discipleship to Paramahansa means here at Ananda and what form that takes and how it operates in our lives and in our relationships with one another, whether personally or organizationally. The nucleus of such a movement needs integrity and needs attunement in order to have the power to do what it's supposed to do. And so to dilute that power on the basis of a more vague principle of ahimsa simply doesn't make practical sense. Okay, you can read the article on our website, and I hope you can see some insights here. All right.